So to the Governor of Cebu, recognize Governor Gwen.
Thank you very much, Senate President Tito Soto. Good morning, my buntag, and good morning to all of our honorable senators, cabinet secretaries, and all that are in attendance in today's Senate hearing. First of all, I would like to thank the Senate President for allowing the province of Cebu to make a presentation as regards the protocols that we have arrived at after careful analysis and study of the actual situation here in the province of Cebu, in the island of Cebu, as well as the plight of our OFWs and returning overseas Filipinos. Before doing that, allow me to make a presentation of the situation right now in the province of Cebu. And these are data that we regularly collect every day from all of our municipal health officers, all of our city health officers, as well as we compare notes with the regional Department of Health here in Region 7. In the province of Cebu, from April 20 to December 31st, 2020, we had a total of 6,982 cases or positives. From January 1st to June 13th, we logged a total of 9,150 cases. But since it would be a misimpression to just keep on counting the positive cases, especially since in this particular disease, we are actually spanning 2 years now, or almost 2 years. We did not do a reset of counting, unlike other diseases. This is now a total case from the very beginning. And so we took into account how many had died, how many had recovered, ending up with the active cases pegged at 405 or 2.5%. Of the 750 that died, we took the initiative to actually go down to the death certificates in order to ascertain whether the 750 had in fact died of COVID-19. What was our basis? What would be pegged as the immediate cause of death? And with this investigation, of the 750 logged as COVID deaths, it was only 187 that were actually COVID, or that COVID was the immediate cause of death. Other causes were heart attacks, motor vehicular accidents, sepsis, diabetes, and many other causes. And so the 549, which are listed under incidental findings, refer to those that died of other causes, and sometimes they are swabbed post-mortem. And if they turn out positive, they immediately are logged as COVID deaths. But in this case, the COVID positivity was only incidental to the actual cause of death.
Governor Gwen had, but I have not heard the critique of the critique on Cebu's protocol by DOH, that they are actually testing them on the first day and on the 7th day. Kasi I heard explanations that hindi pwedeng on the first day lang kasi you don't know how long that we've gone through this for the past year. We all know that it could be harboring there and it's not coming out till the 2nd, the 3rd, or the 4th day. But the reality is they could have gotten exposed 12 days before, so their first day of arrival in the Philippines is their 13th day. So in the case of Cebu, they're testing on the first day and they're testing on the 7th day. So they catch them on 2 different time frames. So I'm still a little bit confused that policy is not given that policy isn't appreciated. Kasi the way I heard it critique was that hindi pa pwedeng on the first day lang. Meron nga din silang on the 7th day. Tapos meron silang bantay sa LGU. So,
Yeah, Senator Cayetano, go ahead.
yeah, Mr. President, just for ease of going about the hearing, obviously we'll follow the schedule of questions by our colleagues. But Governor Gwen presented very detailed and convincing, scientifically based evidence, experiences. Would it be possible to just get a quick response from DOH?
Still here? Meron lamang po akong katanungan.
She could be, she's still online. The office of the provincial government is still online. So let us see. Governor Gwen, are you still on?
Yes, Mr.
Yes,
President.
go ahead.
Okay. Gov. Gwen, are you aware of the recent pronouncement of from Secretary Roque that the President has ordered LGU Cebu to follow Iatf quarantine protocol for OFWs and ROFs? May I get your comment and reaction on this?
Yes, Senator Pong. I am aware of that. And at the outset, allow me to say that I have only deep respect for the President and the office that he represents. As Governor of the province of Cebu, I am also mindful of the fact that a greater majority of the Cebuanos support the President. In fact, in the last presidential election, President Duterte got a majority of 1.2 million votes, a margin of 1.2 million votes over his closest rival. So with that in mind, allow me also to state that I also have great respect for the rule of law. In Cebu, we are not only talking about an executive order, but a provincial board ordinance that was passed by our provincial board unanimously, adopting the protocols of my executive order. As we all know, a provincial ordinance, unless declared ultra vires in a proper court, is the local law of the land, in accordance with Republic Act 7160, otherwise known as the Local Government Code. And so, out of deep respect to the President, I shall be asking our provincial board members to revisit the ordinance, and this time to invite the technical advisors or medical experts that Secretary Duque continues to refer to invite over to the province of Cebu so that they could present their own data.
Mr. Senator Bong, first of all, I'd like to thank the provincial governor for her open invitation. I'll take it up. I will present that to the IATF that there's a standing invitation for our some select members of the IATF and also the group of experts to be able to present the critique that they put together in response to the presidential directive last May 31st. So we will arrange for that particular meeting where we will be asking for an opportunity to present the critique. We will send also the good governor the critique this afternoon or at the latest tomorrow morning. And my apologies that you were not furnished the critique, but with my reassurance, we will provide you such. But certainly, we would love to get our experts to visit Cebu province and to present their own data why they are of certainty that the protocol that is nationally adopted is the way to go. Thank you very much.
Now, if you could recall, a few days ago, I appeared before the Senate and presented our data, the situation here in Cebu, as well as the protocols that we have put in place with the agreement of all concerned government agencies, knowing fully well our situation here. In fact, several senators supported our position that the local government code, in fact, grants local autonomy to all LGUs, and Section 105 of the local government code specifically states that the Secretary of Health may only take over health operations of a particular local government unit for the duration of 6 months, after which it can only be extended with the concurrence of the local government unit concerned. The Secretary of Health heads the Iatf. The Iatf, created by virtue of an executive order issued by then President Benigno Aquino III. So the legal issues are very clear. The provincial ordinance, which adopted the protocols that I set forth in Executive Order 17, is the law of the land at this point in time, because no one has questioned it, no one has gone to court, much less has it been declared ultra vires by a proper court. We are a government of laws, not of men. And so it is not about someone saying that the provincial ordinance is null and void because it goes against a particular resolution issued by IATF. You see, if that were to be so, then perhaps we should abolish the provincial board. We should then forget about Republic Act 7160 and even forget about the Constitution that states specifically that local government units shall enjoy local autonomy. Now I am speaking to you because you are aware that in that Senate hearing, when I was asked by Senator Bong Revilla what my reaction was as regards the statement of Secretary Hari-Harian that the President has insisted that Cebu follow the IATF protocols, I answered this way. Allow me to repeat it so that it is made very, very clear. I said that at the outset, I wish to emphasize that I have only the deepest respect for President Rodrigo Roa Duterte and the office that he represents. I even added further by saying, in fact, as Governor of Cebu, I am very much aware that a greater majority of Cebuanos support President Duterte. They showed it in the last presidential elections, where President Duterte won with an overwhelming margin of 1,200,000 votes over his closest rival. And then I proceeded to say, on the other hand, I also have the deepest respect for the rule of law. Because that is what my oath of office, or any oath of office of any elected and even appointed official, demands of us. That I shall support and defend the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, that I shall obey all laws, legal orders, and decrees promulgated by the duly constituted authorities of the Republic of the Philippines. What is the situation here in Cebu? It may be different in other provinces. First of all, other provinces may not have an international airport. We have an international airport. So we have arrivals of OFWs and returning overseas Filipinos. Here in Cebu, I not only issued an executive order that spelled out the protocols for arriving OFWs and ROFs at the Mactan Cebu International Airport. There also is an existing provincial board ordinance that has adopted the protocols set forth under Executive Order 17. And unless and until this provincial board ordinance is declared ultra vires by a proper court, not by anybody who says that they have the authority. The reason why we have a separation of powers is precisely that. The legislative branch legislates, the executive branch executes or implements, and the judiciary decides when there is a conflict or when there is a question of law. The ordinance stays. And so in that Senate hearing, I said, but out of deep respect to the President, I shall request the provincial board to revisit the ordinance. And in so doing, invite Secretary Duque, his medical experts, and even members of the IATF, so that they may present the science and the basis for the IATF guidelines that insists upon a 10-day quarantine in a designated quarantine facility, in this case, hotels that are identified. 10-day stay in the hotel vis-a-vis or in comparison to our own protocols, where an arriving ROF or OFW is swabbed on arrival. With a negative result, they may now go home to their respective LGUs to continue their home quarantine. So I said, let us listen to the critique that the President had asked Secretary Duque to come up with on the Cebu protocols, because we had never been furnished a copy of that critique, which was strange because they were doing a critique on our own protocols, and after such critique had been done, they came up with the same pronouncement that still the IATF guidelines or protocols should be followed. I extended an invitation, which Secretary Duque readily accepted. And in fact, in that same Senate hearing, he said, I shall send the provincial government a copy of that critique. Well, on the 15th of June, Secretary Duque wrote to me. You have a copy of that? And it states, this is to respectfully transmit the experts' analysis and comments on border control measures implemented in Cebu Province, dated 2 June 2021, submitted by the Department of Health to the Office of the President, now to the Cebu Provincial Government. We have been initially informed of your availability on June 28
2021, and request for your confirmation of the said date. For the proposed meeting with DOH, select members of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases and our technical experts on the quarantine and testing protocols implemented by the CPG. The Office of the Field Implementation and Coordination Team for Visayas and Mindanao, under Undersecretary Abdullah Dumama of this department, shall coordinate with your office to the preparations for the said meeting. We replied to this letter from Secretary Duque, June 18, 2021. Dear Secretary Duque, greetings from the Provincial Government of Cebu. I write to acknowledge receipt of your letter and the expert analysis and comments on border control measures implemented in Cebu Province dated June 2, 2021. In this regard, I am confirming my availability on June 28, 2021 for the meeting with the Department of Health and select members of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Disease. We will be joining the Cebu Provincial Board during their session in the Cebu Provincial Capital to allow them to have a better understanding of the aforementioned analysis when they revisit Provincial Ordinance number 2021-04 as amended by Provincial Ordinance number 2021-05. I hope that this meeting will help us reach a common ground to find a win-win solution on the health protocols being implemented in the province of Cebu. With my high esteem, I remain very truly yours, Gwen Garcia, Governor of the province of Cebu. You see, my gesture of inviting Secretary Duque, members of the IATF, and the technical experts was a hand that I reached across the great divide that separates our protocols, the Cebu protocols, and the IATF protocols. For if we really would wish to uphold the greater welfare of the greater majority, we need to be able to find common ground and work at a win-win solution. That gesture of reaching across was done in good faith, believing still that all of us that have been tasked to serve the people, whether as elected or appointed officials, would have the best interest of the greater majority of our people in mind. And that best interest can only be arrived at if we both work together. And yet, what happened after that was that the IATF passed Resolution 122 last Friday, insisting again that the IATF protocols be implemented here in Cebu. We had thought that in the interim, from the extension of my invitation to the actual arrival of our technical experts here in Cebu and their eventual presentation to the provincial board, we would have maintained a status quo. But, contrary to my expectations, done in good faith, there were certain members of the IATF that ordered the police, that ordered the DOT, as well as the DOH and other agencies to fully implement the IATF guidelines. Truth to tell, a meeting was called late last Saturday. And in that meeting, with the different government agencies, apparently, a lawyer of the DILG stated that our ordinance is null and void because it does not follow IATF guidelines. Last I checked, this is still the Republic of the Philippines, and we are in a democracy. A republic is a form of government where there are representatives of the people, elected by the people to represent their best interest. In this case, our provincial board members and the presiding officer, our vice governor, were elected precisely to perform their task in accordance with Republic Act 7160 or the Local Government Code, Section 484, which clearly defines the powers of the provincial board. And yet, by a mere statement of one person, it would seem that all powers in all branches of government are now vested upon the powerful IATF, or some members at least. Why? Because now an IATF resolution is now legislation and therefore becomes law. And IATF now believes that it is vested with executive powers to insist that local government units follow what they call an IATF resolution, which they believe is the law. And when there is a conflict or a question about what should be upheld, a provincial board ordinance or a resolution from the IATF, it's the same IATF, or at least this lawyer from the DILG, that proclaims that the provincial board ordinance is null and void. So have they now also abrogated upon themselves judiciary powers? Because that is supposed to be exclusively vested upon the judiciary. When a provincial board ordinance is passed and someone questions it, you do not set it aside by a mere statement that it is null and void. That is for the court to decide. Let me just make that very clear. Unless this lawyer has forgotten his own lessons in law. For that reason, yesterday, in the international flight arrivals, they took away the swab on arrival and then sent all of them to the hotels, stating that they would be swabbed only on the 7th day in accordance with the IATF guidelines. This morning, I got all of the cries for help from our ROFs and OFWs. In fact, here is one who arrived, a Cebuano from Toledo. A parent was very, very concerned because it would seem that this OFW or returning Filipino and let me read. Ang parents ni Ari sa balay, nabalaka sila sa ilang anak kay nagdepression. And it's the reason ni uli unta. It seems gi-implement yun ang bagong guidelines. And so that is, and I know that some others are suffering the same. This returning Filipino has come home because he dunay depression. Now, this person is being kept in the hotel. So I called for a meeting with DOH, DOT, the Bureau of Quarantine, and the HRAP, who apparently were also warned that if you do not keep this person for 10 days inside the hotel, then fines and penalties will be levied against you. I called all of them to remind them that this is still a government of laws and not of men. And as such, in Cebu, there is an existing ordinance which clearly spells out the swab on arrival protocol, and if found negative, within 2 or 3 days, may go home to continue their quarantine at home. Holding them beyond the 2 or 3 day period when there is an existing law in the province of Cebu could expose them to possible charges of kidnapping and serious illegal detention, as well as resistance and disobedience to a person in authority or agents of such person. The only reason that you can hold a person inside a hotel is if there is an existing law. The existing law right now in Cebu is that you are tested upon arrival with a negative test result, usually that comes out on the 2nd or 3rd day, then you're allowed to go home. That is the existing law. If hotels will be forced to keep these people in detention until the 10th day, as required by an IATF resolution, then that opens up hotels and even other persons that are not following or are not implementing the provincial ordinance to serious criminal charges. Under the revised penal code, Section 267, kidnapping and serious illegal detention. Let me read this. Any private individual who shall kidnap or detain another or in any other manner deprive him of his liberty shall suffer the penalty of reclusion perpetua to death. If the kidnapping or detention shall have lasted more than 5 days, this is for serious illegal detention. If it shall have been committed simulating public authority, physical injuries have been inflicted, if the person is kidnapped or detained shall be a minor, female, or public officer. So that is Section 267. What is Article 151 of the revised penal code? Resistance and disobedience to a person in authority. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 100,000 shall be imposed upon any person who, not being included in the provisions of the preceding articles, shall resist or seriously disobey any person in authority or the agents of such person while engaged in the performance of official duties. The explanation for this is Article 151 of the RPC punishes unjustifiable disobedience of lawful orders of persons in authority or their agents. Now, I, as Chief Executive of the Province of Cebu, am tasked to implement the provincial ordinance, which spells out the protocols for arriving ROFs and OFWs. Otherwise, I may be charged with dereliction of duty. And so that is why, in order to exercise my mandate as a person in authority, but more so, in order to fulfill my commitment that I shall obey all laws, legal orders, and decrees promulgated by the duly constituted authorities of the Republic of the Philippines. And the Provincial Board is a duly constituted authority of the Republic of the Philippines. I am standing by my oath, and it is my duty to see to it that the Provincial Board Ordinance, unless otherwise declared by a proper court and not by a lawyer of the ILG, by a proper court as ultra vires, I shall fulfill my duty of implementing such an ordinance. That is why I have issued Executive Order number 23, reminding the general public and concerned government agencies to implement Cebu Provincial Ordinance number 2021-04 as amended. And so, this executive order, among others, specifically points out to Section 105 of the Local Government Code, which gives the Secretary of Health, Chairman of the IATF, temporary control over health operations for a period not exceeding 6 months. It's been over a year. Since last March, when the IATF was first convened by virtue of Executive Order 168, it's been a year and 3 months. In no case shall such control exceed a cumulative period of 6 months. With the concurrence of the local government unit concerned, the period for such direct national control and supervision may be further extended. As I had said in my earlier press conferences, this is not to say that we shall not listen to what the IATF may recommend. In fact, that is why I have invited the IATF over to Cebu to present their data, their rationale, their science to the Provincial Board. But then, in the end, as mandated by the Local Government Code, it is the local government unit that has to decide, because we, above all, must uphold the general welfare of our own constituents as contained under the General Welfare Clause. So we may either concur or not, but that is what local autonomy is all about. And unless the local government code is then again set aside by a proper court or any provision thereof, it is still the obtaining law of the land. Whereas Section 25, Article 2, Sections 2 and 3 Article 10 of the 1987 Constitution sets local autonomy as a policy of the state. To wit, Section 25, the state shall ensure the autonomy of local governments. Section 2 of Article 10, the territorial and political subdivisions shall enjoy local autonomy. And whereas Section 2 of the Local Government Code reiterates the policy of local autonomy, which states, it is hereby declared the policy of the state that the territorial and political subdivisions of the state shall enjoy genuine and meaningful local autonomy. Section 16 of the Local Government Code states that every local government unit shall exercise the powers expressly granted, those necessarily implied therefrom, as well as powers necessary, appropriate, or incidental for its efficient and effective governance, and those which are essential to the promotion of the general welfare, so that within their respective territorial jurisdictions, local governments units shall ensure and support, among other things, the preservation and enrichment of culture, promote health and safety, enhance the right of the people to a balanced ecology, encourage and support the development of appropriate and self-reliant scientific and technological capabilities, and more so, enhance economic prosperity and social justice, promote full employment among their residents, and preserve the comfort and convenience of their inhabitants. Staying inside a hotel for 10 days when you have come home for a family emergency, where it's either a loved one has fallen ill or in fact has died. And yet, even though you may already have arrived in your home country, you are not allowed to be with your family. And you have to stay in a hotel room, which, by the way, does not get clean for 10 days. Because how can hotel staff mingle with the quarantined person? And which for many hotels, beddings and towels are not changed. And therefore, you are subjecting this OFW or ROF to such unhygienic and unsanitary conditions on the insistence of an IATF guideline, which, I'm sorry to say, does not seem to put into the equation human consideration and even budgetary consideration. Section 468 of the LGC defines the powers, duties, and functions of the Sangguniang Panlalawigan. And therefore, it states, the Sangguniang Panlalawigan as the legislative body of the province shall enact ordinances, approve resolutions, and appropriate funds for the general welfare of the province and its inhabitants pursuant to Section 16, that's the General Welfare Clause, in the proper exercise of the corporate powers of the province. It states that the Sangguniang Panlalawigan shall approve ordinances and pass resolutions necessary for an efficient and effective provincial government, and in this connection shall adopt measures to protect the inhabitants of the province from harmful effects of man-made or natural disasters and calamities, to provide relief services and assistance, and their return to productive livelihood. So it is well settled that Section 468 defines the powers of the Sangguniang. Therefore, in light of what happened, I have issued this executive order warning everyone that those that shall violate the provincial ordinance that is still in force and effect may be subject to criminal charges. First, from those that may be burdened with further a prolonged stay in the hotel, tantamount to illegal detention or even serious illegal detention. And under the revised penal code, resistance to a person in authority or agents of such person, because there is an existing law of the province of Cebu. I have sent copies of this executive order number 23 to all of our heads of agencies, and it was my understanding that with this executive order, the Bureau of Quarantine will go back to the swab upon arrival. The DOH will go back to the swab upon arrival. Those that were not swabbed yesterday will be swabbed today or tomorrow at the latest. And with the negative test result, they may then go home to their respective local government units. So that's it. We're ready for questions.
Clarify lang ako. Yesterday, wala na siya swab upon arrival and then karon ato gibalik.
Yes. So katunga ng swab kahapon. Those that were not swabbed yesterday, because agreed in the meeting that we had earlier, they will be swabbed today or tomorrow at the latest.
You mentioned also that those who will not follow the ordinance will be held liable for criminal and administrative. Who will file the case?
If it is as regards kidnapping and serious illegal detention, it will be the person concerned. Those that will be made to stay longer than what is in the ordinance of 2 to 3 days. If it is resistance and disobedience to a person in authority or agent of such persons, I shall request for authority from the provincial board to file such charges. I earlier made it very clear, walang personalan, but I have, as Governor of Cebu, to fulfill my duty to implement Provincial Ordinance 2021-14. 2021-04 as amended. So, if I may just go back. So to those, I know that there are quite a number that are watching this live press conference, especially those that have been affected by the no swab upon arrival yesterday. Know your rights. It's not because you are a returning Filipino or an OFW that you no longer may enjoy the same rights that we Filipinos in this country enjoy. The only way that you can be made to stay in a particular quarantine facility is when there is an existing law. What is the existing law right now here? You stay for 2 to 3 days. If you're made to stay beyond that, I understand there are some instructions that hotels are being told to keep these FWs regardless, to keep them, even if there's a negative test result, to keep them, to insist that they be kept in the hotel rooms. I already presented to HRAC. Please consult your lawyers. Because if you will be insisting on keeping them until the 10th day, you're open to charges of illegal detention from those that are forced to stay. So, for those that are affected, I hope that you will, I hope that you will defend your rights. I'm trying the best that I can, but I can only do so much. There is that saying which I believe all of you know. There are no tyrants where there are no slaves. If we sleep on our rights, then that's the time that our rights are set aside.
You met with the police and the military this afternoon. What's their promise?
Okay, let me be very clear. I met with the PNP last Friday because I was made aware that there was a text message that was sent to all of the provincial director, the municipal chiefs of police, the city directors of Cebu City, Mandaue, and Lapu-Lapu, that supposedly Secretary Anyo had ordered that the IATF resolution be implemented and that USEC Florese was now coordinating with them in order that the police will insist that there will be no home quarantine. So I met with General Montejo last Friday together with the DRDO, General Minong, and our provincial director, Colonel Engelbert Soriano, and we thrashed it all out, saying that there is an existing provincial ordinance, which is the existing law. And if you are being told to set that aside, then that is tantamount to being illegally ordered. But as I said, well, ask for a 110 directive, if that is so. I think they already earlier met the PNP, and they established that their role would only be to see to it that the arriving Filipinos would be properly escorted to the hotel. You see, it is not them that issues the clearance. It is the Bureau of Quarantine. And so that if the Bureau of Quarantine issues that certificate of clearance, then as far as the PNP is concerned, they no longer have any role. Even insisting that there should be no home quarantine, take note. A greater majority of our LGUs have passed individual resolutions supporting EO 17 and the provincial board ordinance. And so that has to be respected. I met with the armed forces, well, not entirely the armed forces. That was a courtesy call by the head of the new, the 302nd Battalion that has been sent to Cebu. But they are in agreement. Well, I first asked them to work closely with the PNP, and they're always in agreement that they would always support the Cebu provincial government.
It's a really big police are placed in a situation whether they follow the LG, Secretary Anyo, or the ordinance.
Well, I think the PNP are professional men and women in uniform, and they are very much aware of what is legal and what is not, and will act accordingly.
Our reaction lang regarding sa kanang gag order na gisangon sa DOH and Dr. Hari-Harian na ginapatingunggon.
Well, I think kamoy dapat mo react, dili ako. Because it's a gag order issued by DOH against one of its own, si Dr. Jean Loreche, the spokesperson, I believe, of the DOH, chief pathologist, one who is highly respected. And now she's not allowed to speak to you. I think it should be the media who should react, not to me. She's still allowed to talk to me anyway.
And ngayon sa day ko, bagong pathologist sila si board member speak ha sa Hari-Harian session sa June 28 to defend them sa data.
So what do you want me to react? We're completely within the prerogative of the board. I respect them.
There's a case filed by two lawyers this morning on declaratory relief. Actually, your reaction on that?
Yeah, I'm aware of that. And that's a legal issue. In fact, I talked about it in the Senate hearing. But at the time, I was more focused on inviting Secretary Duque just to show my sincerity that we are willing to listen to you. So I did touch upon it, but I said, what did I say? But that's a legal issue and I will not delve into that. Now that's a legal issue that has been taken up by the lawyers themselves. And first of all, that's a courageous move. You see, it is really during these times when courage is needed, lest we just lose all that we had fought for, all that those that came before us had fought for, and that is our democracy and our own civil rights. As lawyers, I believe that they are the right persons to settle this legal issue, or in fact to bring it to court, because it is the court that settles this legal issue. On the other hand, let me emphasize that the June 28 meeting or session with the provincial board, where we shall be having Secretary Duque and the technical experts, in that particular session, what we shall settle is the protocols and a medical issue. Maybe the science of their protocols and the science of our own. Because let's not make any mistake about it. As far as the provincial board and this governor is concerned, there's no question about the provincial ordinance being in force and effect right now until a court declares it otherwise. It is not a person or a lawyer or even a collegial body that can do it. It's the court.
On last week, you offered invitation sa ilaha, and then here comes Saturday, how do you feel about it? Go.
Well, greatly disappointed, because I had always tried to look for the good in people. And even with my worst enemies, I would still find a way that we could reach common ground. You know that. You know how I have been as governor. In spite of all the brickbats that were thrown against me during the election by, some officials, mayors, and whatever. But after the elections were over, I set everything aside. All the hurt, all the bad feelings that I had, because I had work to do. And I reached across and worked with all of the members of the provincial board and the vice governor, regardless of political affiliation. I reached across to all mayors in all of our municipalities and cities, believing that if we could only give them a chance to see how we work, then perhaps we will be able to reach a common understanding and common ground. And that is what you're seeing now in the province of Cebu. You have an entire provincial board together with the vice governor moving in the same direction as myself. And you have all of our mayors moving in the same direction as well. And that was what I tried to achieve by reaching across to the IATF and offering them that invitation. And yet, this is what they did. So, I have been forced now to exercise my duty as governor of the province of Cebu by issuing this executive order, pointing out that the ordinance must be respected and followed.
June 28 is still a few days away. Are you hoping natin go through si IATF doing what they did over the weekend?
I'll never speculate. You know me, I don't answer speculative questions. In the same way that I present my report to the Cebuanos and the rest of the country on the COVID situation, I present facts and figures. I do not speculate. I do not say, what if this variant will be highly transmissible? I do not say, what if this will be more deadly? I look at the figures. What is the mortality rate? What is the recovery rate? What is the positivity rate? I present facts and verified, validated data. I do not make presumptions.
Okay, more questions? Okay, go. Closing.
Well, in closing, I guess as you have seen, this really has been quite a journey. And along this journey, I know that so many of you have been closely monitoring, have been closely praying and hoping that in the end, you, the powerless, the voiceless, you who are most affected and burdened as OFWs and ROFs, you will be given a voice. You know, time and again I have been asked, why are you doing this, Gwen? You know, give it up. It's good for your own personal convenience and comfort. Why do you look for all of this stress? I'm telling you now, it would have been the easiest thing to do. And just look the other way. For after all, I am not the one affected. I am not a returning Filipino. I am not an OFW. But then, God has somehow blessed me with this position as governor of Cebu. And with this power comes great responsibility. You cannot change policies. The nameless, the faceless, the powerless. But we, who are elected and trusted by the people, may craft policies, ordinances, laws that can alleviate your suffering. And that is why I'm still here. I'm still here. And for as long as this government is still a government of laws and not of men, I will continue to stand by the rule of law. Daghan kay salamat. Maayong gabi kanatong tanan.